Hi, I'm Benny
My name
Morris.
is Yossi Klein Halevi.
I'm Lahav Harkov.
I'm David Stav.
My name is Einat Wilf.
And this is 18 questions.
18 questions
for 40 Israeli
for 40
thinkers.
Israeli thinkers.
From 1840.
From 1840.
From 1840.
Hi, my name is Sruli Fruchter, and I am the interviewer from 18 Questions, 40 Israeli Thinkers, and this is 18 Questions, 40 Israeli Thinkers from 1840. Do you think peace between Israelis and Palestinians will happen within your lifetime? I asked that question to 40 Israeli thinkers over the last year, from June 2024 to June 2025, and all of their answers were very interesting and very different. We talk about peace in context of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict so often that it starts to actually lose its force, and are we really even talking about anything that means anything? Turning to different Israeli thinkers, whether they were left-wing, right-wing, religious, or secular, and asking them whether they thought that by the time they had to expire in this lifetime, they would see peace between Israelis and Palestinians to this intractable conflict that has had people scratching their heads for so many decades, trying to understand, will we ever come to a peaceful resolution? Was very sobering to see thinkers come back into a little bit more of a vulnerable place, away from the intellectual space, and to really address that question of, is there a future where Palestinians and Israelis can live side by side and coexist together peacefully, without terror, without war, in harmony? Rabbi Yakov Nagen, a peace activist and interfaith activist, who is a teacher at Yeshivat Otniel and also works with Or Torah Stone, said that people think about peace in these very grandiose terms, and he always tells his students that when I engage in an interfaith connection or an interfaith relationship with Jews and Muslims, with Jews and Christians, or Jews and someone else, and it's just me and this person, that connection, that bond that we forge in that moment, that is peace. The goal is to keep creating peace in every single interaction with every single person. It's a lot more of an attainable and optimistic view than most people had.
I think if this is a yes or no question, this could undercut the ability to move ahead, because it seems so far away that people could lose faith. Students of mine sometimes say, Rabbi Yaakov, the fact that you talk to these imams, do you think that's going to bring peace? So I tell them, you don't understand. If me, a Jew, a rabbi, creates a real, authentic relationship and connection to another person, a Muslim, an imam, and there's true friendship between us, this isn't only a means to an end. This is peace. This is shalom. This is happening right now between us. It's here now. We would like to multiply this by millions. So perhaps, dear students, let go, make peace. Find the other, Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, or Christian. Create a relationship, create a connection, and that will be to create peace in your lifetime. And I think perhaps it's important to explain the difference between the word peace in English to the beautiful word shalom in Hebrew. Jewish peace is about connection. Sometimes peace programs are about us here and them there, big walls, big disconnections. Peace is about connection. If I could share you a mystical teaching from the Zohar, the word shalom begins with the letter shin, which in Hebrew represents eish, fire. It ends with the letter mem, which in Hebrew represents mayim, water. Shalom is to take elements that are different, in some ways in conflict with each other, fire and water, and bringing them together. Or as I say, Jerusalem, the word Yerushalayim has in it the word shalom, and many of the prayers and the psalms of Jerusalem talk about shalom. And I think there are three approaches to Jerusalem. One, it's about, and the three C's. Is it control? Is it concede? Or is it connection? For some, it's all about power. Who has the power? For some say, concede. Well, it's causing us a headache. Maybe if we give it to the other, we'll solve the problem. But I believe Jerusalem, it's about the sea of connection. In fact, again, if we go back to Messianism, Messianism sees the temple as a house of prayer for all people. The alibi for the Hamas, for their murderous attack against Israel, was Al-Aqsa in danger. And I feel both in Islamic and Jewish sources, this is a blasphemous, sacrilegious attack on that holy place, because certainly from a Jewish view, the Temple Mount is a place of connection, whereas I said before in Isaiah, a house of prayer for all people. So many prophecies talk about the future of humanity coming to Jerusalem. And Islamic sources also, in the Hadith, the account of Muhammad going up to heaven from the Temple Mount, and that's where, from Al-Aqsa, where in Islamic tradition received the pillar of prayer. On the way, he meets Moses, and they have a discussion between them. They refer to each other as brother, and first Muhammad goes up, is told pray 50 times a day, and then Moses says, it's too much, negotiate with God, and they keep going back and forth till Moses helps Muhammad get it down to 5. But you see the respect in Islamic tradition for Moses, who Islam sees certainly as Jews as the primary Jewish prophet. And so what better place for Jews and Muslims and Christians who sharing our one God to express our brotherhood and our sisterhood, to come together to pray to God. So this using Yerushalayim, Har HaBayit Al-Aqsa, for evil and violence as Hamas does, this is a great sacrilege. But so in peace, I feel we must embrace every step along the way, and by doing that, we'll have the motivation and faith to take that next step to make it broader and deeper in building the connections and relationships between all who live here. And maybe one last point here about the power and how I feel that this is what so much of humanity is looking for. One day in the yeshiva that I teach at, I'm called to the office and I said, and told, you have to see this. I'm wondering why they're calling me out of my study hall, and they're showing me Google has this 1-minute clip called The Year in Review of the great pictures of the year. And I'm thinking, why are they showing me this to me? When we got to second 40, I realized the year in search, Google picks a picture for all the great questions that people search for answers during the year. And in searching to make sense, I saw a picture of myself hugging my dear soul brother and friend, Sheikh Ibrahim, from the Mount of Olives, hugging each other in an event called the Jerusalem Hug, in which Jews, Muslims, and Christians, Israelis and Palestinians come together to hug the walls of the city of Jerusalem, old city of Jerusalem, to say, we want Jerusalem to bring us together and not separate us.
Netta Barak Corren was not so eager to follow in that more hopeful and visionary-oriented path. She says that it is unwise to commit herself to predictions about what will happen. She is much more of a pragmatist. Make a plan, see a vision, and then follow through on it.
I am not committing myself to predictions. Let me tell you a story. So in, just a few years before the Civil War, in the United States, one of the most major newspapers in Chicago came out with the headline, "We will not see the end of slavery in our lifetime." Right before, World War I began, people were sitting in coffee shops and never knowing that the world is going to go to hell, just the next day. Right before October 7th, we had no idea. We, in terms of Israeli, civilians, had no idea that this is coming. I think we have such a huge shortage of imagination as humans in making those predictions that I think it's more unwise than wise to commit ourselves to deterministic, views of the future. I think the answer to these, to the questions that matter is that, we should have a vision and work towards it and try to do the best we can in terms of alliances, in terms of our own efforts in order to bring this vision to fruition. There is luck, there are intervening factors, or, force majeures, lots of things could happen. We don't have, I don't think it's wise to look at the future and say, we will not see this in our lifetime and have the dosage of despair that comes with it. So I refuse to play this game.
As someone who's so deeply involved with the issues that Israel faces today and of tomorrow and teaching issues of the past as well, what's that like for you to not be engaging in those types of imaginations, as you described, for the future or predictions of what you think Israel will face or what will happen with Israel?
I think we should definitely take into account serious, assessments of the future. So, for example, when people are talking about, different projections in terms of democracy, in terms of the economy, in terms of education in Israel, I think we should definitely take them seriously. But I think what we should say, is that we are going to work for, peace within our lifetime, and we are going to work for the endurance of the Zionist project during our lifetime, and we are going to work for a host of important global issues within our lifetime, and not bother ourselves with, the possibility that our efforts will mature or will ripen, because that is where I think we have absolutely no ability to really predict the future.
When it comes to Gaza, this was the follow-up question about what she thinks should happen with Gaza and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict after the war. But I think that her answer really embodies how she thinks about these things, and I thought it was really fascinating. So here you go on that.
I hope that Gaza will see a day when it is no longer ruled by Hamas, not just in terms of symbols, but also in practical terms, that it will have a government, an interim government, and then a permanent government that is actually attuned to both the needs of the citizens of Gaza and to peaceful coexistence alongside Israel. I think there are ways to work towards this goal. I personally worked on such a plan with a few co-authors, and we proposed such plan first to Israeli government and security forces.
Is that plan available online, or that's something?
It is. It is available online now. It's available online in the website of the Dayan Center in Tel Aviv University, and I think in other places maybe as well. And we have talked about it extensively. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I want, dedicated to explaining the plan. But I think there are realistic measures that we can take in order to build effective and nonviolent institutions in Gaza. It's a huge question whether Israel is up for what it takes. It's a huge question whether the international community is really willing to invest in making this happen. But there are very practical steps that can be taken tomorrow, could have taken a few months ago, in order to bring this reality closer to actually materialize.
As you mentioned, we're short on time, but I know that in the document there's a lot of discussion about Germany and Japan and Israel engaged in some sort of coalition with, Arab states, international community as well, to kind of help bring about that vision that you were describing for Gaza. Do you see that plan or that direction is where the Israeli government's moving forward, or you think that it's been something that's gotten attention, but unfortunately it's not being implemented as you'd like to see?
I don't know. Contrary to what some people think, I am, none of the people who authored this, me, myself, were not, part of these discussions. We're not making the decisions. I think there is, in general, movement towards working seriously on this plan, but based on the little I know and just what goes on the ground, I would say that Israel is not really nearing a meaningful implementation of this plan as of today. All I can say is that, I hope that whether it's this government or the next government, there would be serious engagement with those basic questions underlying our plan. How to really, how can we really set something that would work, and not just be, our wishful thinking for peace or for quiet in the day after. And then, it doesn't have to be, it could be the case that by that time, the other steps would need to be taken that we didn't write about. Every plan is good for the moment, that it's adapted. If reality shifts, if conditions shift, maybe our plan would no longer be feasible. But the questions and the answers to them, the methodology to answering them, this is what I hope that we will see more. And I don't know if that's happening or not.
Do you think Israel is properly handling the Iranian threat?
That's a tough one. Again, I think, I hope that everyone who you bring to answer this question would start by saying there is so much we don't know, and I am not in the position to give answers, as I'm not privy to everything that Israel is doing. And so, based on the very little that is evident to us, I would say that I hope Israel is doing more than what we see. But I really have no doubt that it is doing more than what I see. So
Others, like the left-wing activist Mikhael Manekin of the left-wing Israeli movement Smol Emuni, the faithful left or the religious left, said that yes, he does believe peace will come, but ultimately it's always going to come with violence first. And he hopes that peace will come afterward, but there really isn't a guarantee. Similar to Netta, he said that our job is still to do what we must do. He's cautious to say that peace is guaranteed, but he's never going to give up on fighting for that future.
The way I imagine sort of dignity at this point goes through more and more violence first, which is something which is very hard for me to reconcile with, in the sense that I can imagine sort of a different state of affairs where out of violence against us and out of our weakness and various different geopolitical calculations, we submit to a different form of governance or the Palestinians, which allow them for dignity. In a sense, it would be great for them to have dignity, but to say that as an Israeli who has whose my physical reality is here, is not a very happy thing to say. And that, so in a sense, even when I do imagine sort of peace in what I imagine you articulated, which is like that, that there are two states or something, something of that nature, I don't know. I can only imagine that at this point going through an immense amount of violence first. And that frightened me very much, and it also makes it very challenging because I'm somebody who's sort of supportive of peace. That being said, like maybe things will happen. Like our job is to do what our job is to do, and I don't know what the world wants for us. So when I analyze, I become very pessimistic, but also like I'm cautious of my very, very limited analysis.
Others, like Nechumi Yaffe, who is also part of Smol Emuni and is a Haredi social psychologist, were much more ambivalent about peace and really answered the question with a lot more of a raw emotion that really touched a nerve in me, and I think for many of our listeners, was very resonant of the heartbreak and sometimes the despondency we can entertain when it feels that peace is the furthest thing from our reality.
I don't know. It's a question that I've asked myself this year a lot. I don't know.
I see as we're talking, we're getting very emotional.
Yes.
Can you say why?
Because this year made me realize that maybe we're very much far than I thought we were. I thought like, it's just gonna happen. But now I'm thinking maybe we need more time. Maybe there's no ripeness. It's just so frustrating to think that it's so frustrating. It's unbearable. It's very hard.
What do you think makes you feel so connected to this in such a personal way?
I hate being in this conflict. I hate the idea that we are being killed and we have to kill. I just don't want to be in it. Don't want to be in it. And I'm always telling myself, okay, so we're just going to have peace. We're just going to have peace. But this year made me realize that it's we far than I thought we were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was thinking, you know, the Abraham Accords, it's just going to happen, you know, it's almost happening. It's almost happening.
Do you feel like it's challenged your religious world? I know we touched on that briefly since October 7th, but I'm curious, at least for this aspect.
No, not my religious world. It did challenge my my question of being effective.
Mm. Effective in?
What can I do? The questions that I ask myself, can I move the needle anywhere? Can I do something? I don't know. It's hard.
Other left-wing activists, like Rula Daood, who is the national co-director of Standing Together, the left-wing Israeli Arab Palestinian progressive movement in Israel. Rula said, "We are closest to peace at times of war, and even though everything can seem as if it is hopeless and as if there is no path forward, peace could not be closer. It really comes down to the question of, do our leaders want peace? Because the people want peace," she says. And her faith in the people and her faith in the effect of grassroots movements is ultimately what leads her to believe that we can move toward something better.
It is a good question. I think it might happen, it can happen, if we play our cards in the right way, which means, well, like history have taught us that we are closest to peace at times of war. We know that, it's a fact. And the only question is, what kind of a leadership will we have and what kind of a pressure will we have on that leadership to choose the path that they will go through. Right now, our government is a government that doesn't really want peace. They don't really want a Palestinian state. And we see it each and every day. Like the government, like this government is basically choosing to, again, we will end up with Hamas in Gaza. And we have the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. And what this government can do, the Israeli government, is choose to strengthen the Palestinian Authority and to give them more power within Gaza. So people will see an alternative and people will choose from that alternative.
Instead of Hamas.
Instead of Hamas. So you had a question before about military solutions.
Yeah.
It is not a solution. Mm-hmm. The real solution is giving people hope. Mm. And hope is giving them an alternative
like
to
choose from. A
social
solution that will lead to a political resolution.
Exactly. People need to see something that's different from Hamas in Gaza. And as long as you don't give power, money, infrastructure to build something different so people can choose from, people will still choose Hamas. It's a fact. So this government right now, with all of the politicians, with the US, with the Arab Saudi, and everybody who's trying to give solution after the 7th of October, they need to understand, they do understand that the status quo, cannot be maintained anymore. We can't go back to the 6th of October the 6th. So the question is, what do we do from here? Do we give, again, Hamas the power to control people's lives in Gaza and to be, strong again in 5 or 6 years? Or do we say, no, there is another player, which is a player that can be good to the people in Gaza also, and a one that we can have a real agreement with that can go into having real peace? Mm-hmm. So this is a huge, question. Mm-hmm. The Israeli government right now is still controlled by very right-wing settlers. People who speak of conquering more land, who speak of, whole of Israel, who want to build more settlements in the West Bank. And as long as these people are the one who are navigating these political issues, we won't have peace. Not in my lifetime, okay? But once we can replace these people, once we can have more pressure towards having real solutions, maybe we do have a chance to have real peace. And I think this is what we do in Standing Together. We talk about the solution of peace. We talk about the fact that we can't go on with more wars. We talk about giving an alternative to people who live also in Israel, but also in the West Bank and in Gaza. And for that, we need a lot of political pressure and decisions made by other people in order for us to go to a different path. So yes, if all of these cards align, if we have pressure from the people demanding real solutions, if we have alternatives to the people in Gaza and the West Bank, if we get to a place where we're a real equal, we can get to a place where we can have real peace, because eventually it is the only solution. Like, there's no other solution. It is the only solution. Because if not, we will keep on having wars and destruction and hatred, and it will only end up to basically, not just cracks in our society, but to also somehow, how do you say?
A trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
What do you think should happen with Gaza and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict after the war, which now we're in this stage of the ceasefire, we're in phase 1, and there's still many months to go. But what do you think should happen with it? I know you touched on it briefly in your previous answer.
Yeah. But right now they're like, political meetings, and they're speaking about what to do and whether Hamas is still going to be there. But, at the day of the release of the 3 hostages, we saw Hamas in the streets celebrating. They were there. It was very obvious that Hamas is still in Gaza and controlling. Yes, they have become much more weaker, but Hamas is still there. The ideology of Hamas is still there. And the way I see it, if we really want a solution right now, if it is, having agreements with Hamas, it should be, I don't know how to say it. I think that there should be pushing towards different groups in Gaza, that it's not Hamas. The same way that I think that our government should be changed. And the only alternative right now to Hamas is the Palestinian Authority, is what we have in the West Bank. Yes, and it's not an ideology, it's not the thing that most people want. But
it's not ideal, but
it's not ideal.
What are the options? That's what the options
this is one of the options. And if not, it is basically giving more resources, more money, and more power to people within Gaza who want to build something different, that it's not Hamas. You need to build an alternative, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy. Hamas is still in Gaza. They are the only ones right now who can, again, go back and control Gaza. So if the agreements were to be held with Hamas, compromises need to be written down, agreements of borders, of reconstructing Gaza, again, one of our fights was to lift the siege from Gaza, and it must, even now, still, you can't have millions of people living under siege, not after all of this destruction. But the building is going to take a lot of time. Not just building, the streets and everything, but people believing that something different can happen. People not being scared of Israelis, not seeing all of Israelis as one who would bomb them and kill them. I don't think I do have a specific, a plan of how it will look, but I do believe it starts by understanding that there must be resources into building an alternative to Hamas in Gaza. Because if Hamas remains in power, the same way as if Bibi remains in power, I don't think something is going to change. Nothing. It's going to be again about power and building that power and having more guns. And in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe again another war. We need different politics.
Do you see Hamas and the Israeli government as the same, or you see differences between them in terms of the roles that they have?
No, I don't see any difference between them. I think it's both of them. It is a group of politicians. At the end of the day, these are politicians. And by the way, Hamas and Israel had really good relationships before the 7th of October. The Israeli government was giving money to Hamas and letting money get into Hamas. There's somehow some kind of an understanding between the Israeli government and Hamas, and the fact that the negotiations...
They treat each other as equal politicians, so in your view it's...
Yeah. Yeah. In my view, they're like both, extremists who don't see the benefit of the people in front of their eyes. They don't care about people. They don't put people, at the beginning. They see their own political benefits, what we can benefit from as an organization or as a government, how we can stay in power as a government, as an organization. This is how I see them. And both of them has caused a lot of destruction for the people living in Israel and in Gaza. Yeah.
Yoav Heller is the founder of Revayon HaRevi'i, another grassroots movement in Israeli society that is not right, that is not left, that is not even centrist, but is trying to create a very wide tent for Israeli society to find where people agree, where peace can be found within ourselves, and then hopefully in the broader region. He says in a very bold statement that a Jew without aspirations for peace is not a Jew. Palestinians must recognize Israel and its historical ties to the Jewish people. But he also said that every single Jewish leader of the state of Israel must wake up every single morning, phone the Palestinian leaders, and say, "Hello, Palestinians, good morning. We are ready for peace. Are you?"
I think, first of all, that morally, peace has to be an ideal. Jews without the aspiration of peace are not Jews, okay? We are talking in our scrolls. Wherever you go, you find the word peace. You find the aspiration for peace. So first of all, I think that's why I say once the Palestinians will recognize the state of Israel and historical ties, that's very important, and will give up the notion of return, then we can actually achieve peace. Will take a few years. I think, unfortunately, it might take a generation. So I'm 51. Generation is 25 years. And it might
By
happen.
the end of the century of Israel.
Yeah, it might happen. It will happen only if we will be very clear of our compass and not give in to any lies of let's do an agreement here, but they don't recognize. Let's keep that to it won't work. Once and for all, every day, a prime minister in Israel should wake up and say, Palestinians, hello, good morning. Did you today recognize the Jewish state? And did you give up the right of return? If yes, we're here. Once we will do that, we will be very clear that we aim for peace, and we will create that's maybe the most important, a moderate access in the Middle East. Actually, from India to Greece, we can actually create a line of countries, some of them Christian, one of them Jewish, some of them Muslims, led by Saudi Arabia, which will create a different dynamic. Parallel to that, the aspiration for peace and what we're saying we demand from the Palestinian. Parallel to that, a very firm battle against terror and against all, not waiting for Hamas to attack, we attack. And creating a Palestinian autonomy as much as we can in order to better the life conditions, but nothing beyond that. Until they recognize, I think this 25 years could actually create here a opportunity or the conditions for peace. So that's a long answer for, because it's complicated.
My dad always joked to me that the best follow-up question I could ask if a guest said they did not think there was peace in their lifetime or that there would be peace in their lifetime was that I understand maybe not in your lifetime, but what about mine? And it's a little bit of a cute joke, but I think the question comes to all of us. We're all at different ages and all in different positions. And we have to ask ourselves, do we see peace within our own lifetimes?